Have you ever noticed how certain words just linger in your mind? A sentence someone said to you in passing, days, even years ago, still echoes in your memory. That's not an accident. Words, when spoken with intention, emotion, and timing, have the power to pierce through logic and land directly in the emotional core. And when it comes to men, especially in relationships, this truth becomes even more important. Most men are not naturally wired to be emotionally expressive, but that doesn't mean they're not deeply affected by what's said to them. In fact, it's often the quietest ones, the most seemingly unshakable ones, who carry a single phrase with them all day long, replaying it in their minds like a song they can't turn off. This is because men are constantly craving to feel seen, admired, and wanted, but they rarely admit it. Society trains them to be strong, stoic, and focused, which means they often suppress the emotional side of themselves. But here's the key. When a woman taps into that suppressed emotional space with just the right words, she doesn't just enter his mind, she takes up residence there. He might not show it on his face, but inside, your words are echoing in the quietest chambers of his thoughts. And the beauty is, it doesn't require long conversations or dramatic declarations. Just 3 well-placed words, said at the right time and from the right energy, can trigger something powerful. It's like pressing a button he didn't even know was there. Think about the times someone has said something simple to you that stopped you in your tracks. Maybe it was a compliment you weren't expecting, or someone noticing a part of you that usually goes unseen. Those are the words that stay because they touch something deeper. That's exactly what we're doing here, not just talking, but imprinting. And when you understand that words can leave an emotional fingerprint, you start to realize the power you have. Not to manipulate, but to connect, to influence how a man feels when he's away from you, simply by planting a sentence that blooms in his mind hours later. The reason 3 words are so effective is because they're short enough to remember, but strong enough to carry meaning. They don't overwhelm him. They don't chase him. They slip in under the radar and stay there quietly, persistently. And while every man is different, there are universal emotional triggers that these words can tap into. Appreciation, admiration, curiosity, comfort, desire. When you touch on one of these through your words, he doesn't just hear you, he feels you. And when a man feels you emotionally, he thinks of you obsessively. So when you say something like, "I trust you," or "you amaze me," or even "can't stop thinking," you're activating a loop in his mind. He starts to reflect. Why does she trust me? What did I do that amazed her? What is she thinking about? Suddenly, his mind is no longer on his to-do list or his next meeting. It's on you. And that's the beauty of these 3 words. They don't beg for attention. They create curiosity. They create warmth. They create presence. And presence is what he'll carry with him long after you've said them. Say the right 3 words and you won't have to wonder if he's thinking of you. You'll already know he is. Most people hear a title like "Say these 3 words" and he'll think about you all day, and immediately assume it's the usual trio, "I love you." But that's exactly where most go wrong. Those 3 words, while powerful, are also predictable. They've been said so many times in so many ways that, for a lot of people, especially men, they lose their edge. They don't cut through the noise anymore. And if you're trying to leave an emotional imprint, predictability is your enemy. What really makes a man think about you all day isn't just what you say. It's how it surprises him, disarms him, and slips past his defenses without him even realizing it. The truth is, the most unforgettable words are rarely the most obvious ones. They're the ones that hit him in a place he didn't expect. They make him stop for a second, pause, and replay what you said in his head, wondering why it stuck. And that's the sweet spot. That's the place where connection lives, not in cliché, but in depth, in originality, in subtle impact. You don't need dramatic expressions of love to make someone feel drawn to you. You just need the right emotional doorway. And the right 3 words can be that doorway if they speak to who he is at his core. Now here's where it gets interesting. The most effective 3 words aren't necessarily romantic. They're reflective. They reflect back to him something he wants to believe about himself. That he's strong, that he's capable, that he matters, that you see something in him others don't. When you say something like "you inspire me," or "I feel safe," or "you're different," you're doing something powerful. You're not just offering a compliment, you're validating a deep internal need. And the minute he feels that internal click, he doesn't just hear your words, he starts seeing himself through your eyes. That's what gets him hooked. That's what makes him think. It's not about flattery either. Flattery fades. Impact sticks. When you speak to a man's identity, when you touch the part of him that wants to be respected, needed, even admired, you give him an emotional reason to return to that moment again and again. Men might act logical, but they remember the feelings. They remember the one who made them feel seen without pressure, appreciated without expectation, understood without judgment. And that's what these 3 words do when chosen wisely. They become a mirror. They reflect the best in him back at a time when the world is often tearing him down. So instead of saying, "I love you," like everyone else, say what he's not expecting. Say what catches him off guard, in a good way. Say "you calm me," or "I believe you," or even "I miss you," at a time when he wasn't sure if he mattered. Because those words, when said sincerely and unexpectedly, carry more weight than 1,000 "I love yous." They're rare. They're real. They're unforgettable. The point is, the most powerful 3 words aren't the loudest. They're the most emotionally intelligent. They show him you're not just repeating phrases, you're choosing them. And in that small, deliberate act, you separate yourself from every other person who's just going through the motions. So the next time you want him thinking about you all day, don't reach for the obvious, reach for the real. Because when you say what he didn't know he needed to hear, he'll remember you long after the words have faded. Not every man responds to the same words the same way, and that's where most people miss the mark. You can say the right phrase to the wrong man, or say the right words at the wrong time, and end up with silence instead of impact. That's why it's not just about what you say, but who you're saying it to. Every man has a different emotional language, a unique filter through which he experiences connection, attraction, and vulnerability. And if you can learn to speak directly to that part of him, your words won't just be heard, they'll be felt. That's the difference between being forgettable and unforgettable. Some men respond deeply to admiration. They want to feel like they're your hero, your protector, the one you look up to when life gets heavy. For those men, 3 words like "I admire you" or "you amaze me" can stir something primal inside them. It touches their instinct to provide, to stand out, to be someone's rock. For other men, though, that might not be the trigger. Some men are driven by emotional safety. They don't want to be admired as much as they want to be trusted, confided in, understood. So for that type of man, 3 words like "I trust you" or "I feel safe" can unlock a part of him that he keeps hidden from everyone else. Then there are men who crave intellectual connection. They need to feel challenged, intrigued, mentally stimulated. They're less affected by flattery and more drawn to curiosity. For them, a phrase like "tell me more" or "you're so interesting" can be far more powerful than anything romantic. It shows them that you see beyond the surface, that you're fascinated, engaged, present. That's what draws them in. Because, let's be honest, when a man feels like you get what he values most, he doesn't just think about you, he invests in you. Emotionally, mentally, energetically, and here's where timing matters. It's not just about figuring out which words fit his emotional makeup. It's about when to say them. Early in a connection, a phrase like "you make me smile" feels light, playful, magnetic. It doesn't carry pressure, but it invites attention. Later, when trust has built and walls have softened, saying "you ground me" or "I need this" takes things to another level. It signals that you're emotionally present, that the connection matters to you on a deep, sincere level. That progression, when done with care and honesty, is what transforms casual interest into lasting attachment. What makes this even more powerful is when you say something that aligns with not just who he is, but who he wants to become. Those words are a bridge between the present and the future, his vision of himself, his aspirations, his silent dreams. When you say something like "you're going places" or "I see greatness," you're feeding that quiet hunger he doesn't talk about. You become someone who believes in him even when he doubts himself, and that belief, spoken in just a few words, becomes something he clings to. Not because he needs validation, but because your voice becomes part of his inner drive. So don't guess what words to say. Learn the man. Watch what makes his eyes light up, what topics ignite his passion, what compliments make him pause and smile without trying to. That's your roadmap. That's how you figure out which 3 words will stay with him long after the moment has passed. Because once you speak directly to his emotional center, your words don't just land. They echo, and those echoes are what make him think of you when no one else is around. There's something almost magical about the way timing and tone can change everything. You could say the most perfect 3 words in the world, but if they're delivered at the wrong moment, in the wrong energy, they'll fall flat. But say them at the right time, with the right feeling behind them, and they'll live in his mind all day long, maybe even longer. It's not just the words themselves that make an impact, it's how you wrap those words. It's the tone of your voice, the softness in your eyes, the pause between breaths, the feeling of presence that makes him lean in instead of pull away. Those are the invisible ingredients that turn ordinary phrases into unforgettable moments. Most people think communication is all about the words, but studies show the majority of what we remember from a conversation is the tone and delivery, not the exact language. And that couldn't be more true in romantic energy. When a man hears something said with emotion, with warmth, or with that soft, teasing edge that only you have, it activates something inside of him that logic can't explain. Your voice becomes a melody, your energy becomes a comfort, your presence becomes something he craves. And it's not about trying too hard. It's about being so tuned into the moment that what you say feels effortless, real, and alive. Imagine the difference between saying "I trust you" in a rushed, distracted tone versus saying it after a deep pause with steady eye contact and a quiet, grounded voice. One version feels like filler, the other feels like truth. The same words, but one version disappears and the other stays with him. That's the power of intention. It's why timing matters so much. You don't just drop powerful words into random moments. You sense the right moment, the moment when his guard is down, when his attention is undivided, when his heart is open, maybe even when he least expects to feel anything. And when you meet him there with 3 simple words, you create a memory, you create meaning. There's also something to be said about spontaneity. The most unforgettable words often come when they're not planned. Maybe you're walking beside him, and there's a quiet stretch in the conversation, and you lean in and say, "You ground me." Or maybe you're about to say goodbye, and you pause just long enough to say, "Can't stop thinking." It doesn't need to be dramatic. In fact, the more effortless it feels, the more likely it is to stick. It's the surprise, the emotional contrast, the fact that you chose that moment to express something so simple and true. It leaves a mark. And he might not react much in the moment, but trust me, his mind will keep circling back to it. And then there's your tone, your emotional fingerprint. Every woman has a unique way of expressing herself. Some have a voice that's soothing and calm. Others have an energy that's playful and mischievous. Both can be powerful, depending on how you use them. The key is to be aligned with your own energy while also being aware of his. If you're speaking from a place of genuine emotion, not performance, not pressure, your words carry weight. And if you say those 3 words when your energy is calm, confident, and open, it gives him space to feel instead of defend. That's the real secret, not just speaking to his ears, but speaking to his nervous system, helping him feel safe, seen, and stirred. Because when you match your words with the right tone and timing, you don't just capture his attention, you capture his emotional memory. And that's what keeps you echoing in his mind, long after the moment is over. There's something fascinating about the way a few simple words can influence the way a man sees you, feels about you, and even behaves around you. We often underestimate just how much power subtle emotional cues carry, especially when they're expressed through language. When a man hears something that makes him feel desired, respected, or emotionally safe, it triggers something in him that most don't even consciously understand. It taps into an ancient part of his identity, the part that wants to chase, protect, cherish, and ultimately commit. Not because he's being told to, but because he wants to, because something in your words makes him feel like he's found something rare, something worth holding on to. You see, men are not as detached as they sometimes appear. They might not always express their emotions in the same way women do, but they feel deeply. The difference is, they often don't know what to do with those feelings unless something pulls them in and gives those emotions direction. That's where your words come in. The right 3 words can act like a spark, setting off a chain reaction in his mind and heart. They get him thinking, they stir up emotion, they invite reflection, and most importantly, they invite investment. When you say something like, "You inspire me," he doesn't just hear a compliment, he feels a kind of elevation. He starts to see himself as someone capable of being more, of meaning more. And subconsciously, he wants to live up to that version of himself. That's what keeps him circling back to you in his thoughts. Or when you say something simple like, "I feel safe," it touches a part of him that rarely gets acknowledged. It tells him that you trust him in a world that rarely gives him space to be soft. And when a man feels like your presence helps him drop his armor, he won't just think of you, he'll crave being around you. Even more interesting is how these words, when said without pressure, actually spark his desire to give more. You're not asking for commitment, you're not demanding his energy, you're just planting seeds. Seeds that grow slowly in the quiet moments. When he's alone, when he's reflecting, when he's replaying something you said and wondering why it stuck. Those are the moments when he starts to feel emotionally connected to you without even realizing it. An emotional connection is the glue that turns attraction into something much deeper. Men want to feel like they matter, not just in a general way, but in a way that's personal, specific, and rare. When your words reflect that you see him, not just the surface, but the essence of who he is, it activates his instinct to give, to protect, to prioritize. And when that instinct gets awakened, he doesn't feel like he's losing freedom by committing to you. He feels like he's stepping into something meaningful, something powerful, something that reflects the kind of man he wants to be. The truth is, you don't need to chase him, convince him, or constantly try to prove your worth. What really makes a man think about you, what draws him in and keeps him there, is how your words make him feel about himself when he's around you. If you can make him feel like a better version of who he already is, he'll want to keep you close. Not because he has to, but because he won't be able to stop thinking about how you made him feel alive. There's a big difference between saying something from a place of confidence and saying it from a place of need. That difference might be invisible on the surface, but emotionally it changes everything. The same 3 words can either draw someone in or quietly push them away, depending on the energy behind them. You might not realize it, but people, especially men, can sense the weight of your words, not just the meaning. When you speak from a place of wholeness, from self-respect and emotional strength, your words feel powerful. They carry certainty. They feel like a gift, not a request, and that energy is magnetic. That's what makes a man think about you, not just because of what you said, but because of how you showed up when you said it. When your energy is rooted in confidence, there's no chasing, no convincing, no hoping he reacts a certain way. There's a calm knowing that your words have value because you have value. You're not trying to get something from him. You're simply expressing something meaningful. And ironically, it's that very calm, detached power that grabs his attention the most. Men are used to being pursued in ways that feel emotionally heavy or needy. But when someone speaks to them with lightness, with grace, with assurance, it creates a contrast that's hard to forget. It makes them wonder about you. It makes them curious, and that curiosity is the spark that keeps him thinking about you long after the moment has passed. A woman who speaks from power knows who she is, with or without him. She doesn't use words to try to win someone over. She uses words to connect. She doesn't need validation to feel worthy. She's already rooted in that worth. So when she says something like, "You inspire me," or "I trust you," it doesn't come off as praise to get attention. It feels like truth, like clarity. And because it's so rare to hear words spoken that cleanly, that honestly, it cuts through all the noise. On the other hand, when words are said with desperation, when they come from a place of trying to secure his affection, trying to hold his attention, they carry an invisible tension, a silent pressure, and whether or not he realizes it, he'll feel it, and that feeling doesn't make him think about you in the way you want. It makes him feel responsible for your emotional state, and that's not attractive, it's exhausting. He may care, but he'll subconsciously pull away because the energy doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel light. It feels like work. That's why it's so important to check in with yourself before you speak. Are you expressing something because you genuinely want to share it, or are you saying it because you want a certain reaction? Are your words a reflection of how full you feel or how empty? Because the most unforgettable words come from overflow, not lack. They come from a heart that's already full, already steady, already at peace with or without the outcome. And that's what leaves the deepest impression. When you say something meaningful from a place of quiet strength, you don't just sound different, you feel different. He notices it, even if he can't explain why. It's in the way you hold eye contact, the way your voice doesn't shake, the way you're not waiting for his response to validate your expression. That's what captivates him, that's what makes him think, because in a world full of noise and need, you stand out as something rare, something he didn't even know he was looking for. The most powerful words are the ones spoken when you know you don't need to be chosen. You already chose yourself.